Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest waves. In a world where people rush past each other without a second glance, where busy lives leave little room for strangers, one woman's simple gesture of feeding a hungry old man would soon reveal a truth so powerful it would change her life forever. What she didn't know was that this frail stranger carried secrets that would transform not just her world, but the lives of everyone around her. This is the story of how one plate of food became the bridge between two vastly different worlds, and how compassion opened doors that money and power never could. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk outside Ruby's Diner, a small restaurant tucked between a laundromat and a corner store in the heart of Chicago's South Side. The neighborhood had seen better days, with empty lots where houses once stood and businesses struggling to keep their doors open. But Ruby's remained, a beacon of warmth and comfort food that had been serving the community for over 30 years. Maya Johnson pushed through the glass door, the familiar chime announcing her arrival for another shift. At 28, she had been working at Ruby's for 6 years, ever since she moved to Chicago from Mississippi with dreams of something bigger. Those dreams had been put on hold when life got in the way. But Maya had found purpose in serving others, in being the friendly face that regulars looked forward to seeing each day. The diner was already buzzing with the breakfast crowd. Construction workers grabbed quick coffee and donuts before heading to job sites. Office workers in wrinkled suits rushed through their eggs and toast, checking phones between bites. Maya tied her apron around her waist and grabbed her order pad, ready to dive into the controlled chaos that was the morning rush. "Morning, Maya," called out Tony, the cook, from behind the grill. Steam rose from the flat top as bacon sizzled and eggs bubbled in butter. "Got a full house today. Mrs. Peterson's waiting for you at table 6. Maya smiled and waved, then made her way to Mrs. Peterson, a retired teacher who came in every Tuesday for scrambled eggs and wheat toast. The elderly woman's face lit up when she saw Maya approaching. "There's my favorite girl, Mrs. Peterson said, her voice warm with genuine affection. "How's your mama doing down in Mississippi?" "She's doing good," Mrs. Peterson sends her love. Maya poured coffee into the woman's cup without being asked, knowing exactly how she liked it. "The usual this morning? You know me too well, honey." This was what Maya loved most about her job. The connections. The way people trusted her with their morning routines, their small talk about family and weather and dreams. It wasn't the career she had planned, but it was meaningful in ways she was still discovering. The morning passed quickly, a blur of orders taken and plates delivered. Maya moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee cups, bringing extra napkins, checking on customers with the genuine care that had earned her a reputation as the best waitress at Ruby's. Around 10:30, as the breakfast rush was winding down, Maya noticed an old man standing outside the restaurant. He was looking through the window, but not in the way people usually did when deciding whether to come in. There was something uncertain about his posture, as if he wanted to enter but couldn't quite bring himself to do it. The man was African American, probably in his 70s, wearing clothes that had once been nice but now showed signs of wear. His pants were clean but wrinkled, his shirt faded but pressed. His shoes were scuffed leather dress shoes that spoke of a different time in his life. What struck Maya most was how thin he looked, almost fragile, as if a strong wind might blow him away. She watched him for a moment, then saw him slowly walk away from the window. Something about his hesitation touched her heart. Maya had grown up poor in rural Mississippi, where her grandmother had taught her that you always helped those who needed it, even when you didn't have much yourself. 10 minutes later, the man returned. This time he stood at the window longer, clearly wrestling with some internal debate. Maya could see his reflection in the glass, the way his shoulders sagged with what looked like defeat or embarrassment. Unable to watch anymore, Maya walked to the door and pushed it open. The man looked startled, taking a step back. "Morning, sir," Maya said with her warmest smile. "You thinking about coming in for some breakfast?" The man's eyes met hers briefly, then looked away. "Oh, I was just looking at the menu." His voice was cultured, educated, with a slight tremor that spoke of age or uncertainty. Maya noticed that his gaze kept drifting to the pictures of food in the window, lingering on the stack of pancakes, and the plate of eggs and bacon. She had seen that look before, in her own childhood, in the faces of neighbors who were trying to decide if they could afford to eat that day. "We've got some really good specials today," she said gently. "Why don't you come in, and I'll show you what we've got?" The man hesitated, his hand moving to his pocket in a gesture that Maya recognized. He was checking for money, probably counting what little he had. "I appreciate the offer, miss, but I'm not really," he started to say. "Come on," Maya said, stepping aside and holding the door open wider. "At least come in out of the cold for a minute. I'm Maya, by the way." After a moment's hesitation, the man nodded. "I'm Mr. Williams," he said quietly, stepping through the doorway. Maya led him to a booth in her section, a corner table that offered some privacy. She could sense his discomfort, the way he seemed to make himself as small as possible in the vinyl seat. "Can I start you with some coffee, Mr. Williams?" she asked, already reaching for the pot. Coffee would be nice," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya poured the coffee and set it down in front of him. She watched as he wrapped his hands around the warm cup, as if drawing comfort from its heat. His hands were clean but showed the signs of hard work, with calloused palms and fingers that spoke of a lifetime of labor. "Have you eaten today, Mr. Williams?" she asked gently, sitting down across from him for a moment. The question seemed to surprise him. He looked up at her with eyes that held a mixture of pride and defeat. "I'm not really hungry," he said, but his stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, betraying him. Maya had made her decision. "You know what, Mr. Williams? We made way too much food this morning. The cook always makes extra, and it's just going to go to waste. Would you mind helping us out by eating some of it?" Mr. Williams looked at her for a long moment, and she could see him struggling with his pride. She had framed it as him doing them a favor, giving him a way to accept help without feeling like charity. "I suppose if it's just going to waste," he said finally. "Perfect," Maya said, standing up. "I'll be right back with something good." She went to the kitchen and spoke quietly with Tony. "Can you make up a plate? Something hearty. We've got a gentleman out there who looks like he could use a good meal." Tony, who had been working in restaurants for 20 years, had seen it all. He nodded without question and started piling food onto a plate. Scrambled eggs, bacon, hash browns, and 2 pieces of toast with butter and jam on the side. It was a generous portion, the kind of meal that would stick to someone's ribs. Maya carried the plate back to the table and set it down in front of Mr. Williams. His eyes widened slightly at the amount of food, and she saw him swallow hard. "This is very kind of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't mention it," Maya said. "I'll leave you to eat in peace." She busied herself with other tables, but kept an eye on Mr. Williams from a distance. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, the way someone does when they're not sure when their next meal will come. She noticed that he used his napkin properly, cut his food neatly, had table manners that spoke of a different upbringing than his current circumstances might suggest. When he finished, Maya returned to the table with the coffee pot for a refill. The plate was completely clean. "Was everything okay?" she asked. "It was wonderful," Mr. Williams said, and for the first time he smiled. The transformation was remarkable. Despite his worn clothes and thin frame, when he smiled, Maya could see the man he had once been. Dignified, proud, someone who had probably never expected to find himself in this position. "I'm glad," she said. "Listen, Mr. Williams, we do this every day around this time. Get rid of the extra food, if you're ever in the neighborhood." She left the invitation hanging in the air, not wanting to make him feel obligated, but letting him know he would be welcome. Mr. Williams stood up slowly, as if his joints ached. "Thank you, Miss Maya. This means more than you know." He walked toward the door, then turned back. "I'll pay you back for this someday," he said. "I promise you that." There was something in his voice, a certainty that made Maya believe him, even though she had no intention of ever asking for repayment. After he left, Maya cleared the table and thought about the encounter. There had been something about Mr. Williams that intrigued her. The way he spoke, the careful way he presented himself despite his obvious hardship. She found herself hoping he would return. Ruby, the owner of the diner, appeared at her side. She was a woman in her 60s who had seen the neighborhood change around her restaurant, but had never lost her connection to the community. "I saw what you did there," Ruby said. Maya tensed, wondering if she was in trouble for giving away food. That was good, honey, Ruby continued. That's the kind of thing my mama taught me. You take care of people, they take care of you. Universe has a way of balancing things out. Maya relaxed. He just looked like he needed a meal. Well, you did right. We got plenty of food here. No reason for Inio true to her word. Maya had asked Tony to prepare an extra portion when the morning rush slowed down. She glanced at the clock, 10:25, and found herself watching the window. Part of her wondered if Mr. Williams would return, or if yesterday had been a one-time encounter that would fade into memory like so many brief connections in the service industry. At 10:37, she saw him approaching the diner. This time, he walked with more purpose, though she could still see the hesitation in his movements. Maya smiled to herself and made sure the extra plate was ready. When he entered, she greeted him warmly. Good morning, Mr. Williams. Your usual table. The fact that she remembered his name and acted as if he belonged there seemed to touch him deeply. His shoulders straightened slightly, and that dignified bearing she had noticed yesterday became more pronounced. Good morning, Miss Maya. Yes, that would be nice. She led him to the same corner booth and poured his coffee without asking. I'll be right back with your breakfast, she said, as if it had been prearranged. When she set the plate down, she noticed his hands were cleaner today, his clothes pressed more carefully. He was making an effort, maintaining his dignity despite his circumstances. Miss Maya, he said as she turned to leave, I want you to know I don't make a habit of accepting charity. She sat down across from him again. Mr. Williams, this isn't charity. This is two people sharing a meal. Besides, you're doing me a favor by eating food that would otherwise be wasted. He studied her face for a moment, as if trying to understand what motivated her kindness. You remind me of my daughter, he said quietly. She had your heart. Maya noted the past tense, but didn't pry. Tell me about her. Mr. Williams was quiet for a long moment, stirring his coffee slowly. Sarah was a teacher. Elementary school. She loved those children like they were her own. His voice grew soft with memory. She used to say that kindness was the only thing that multiplied when you gave it away. Sounds like a wise woman. She was. He took a sip of coffee, and Maya could see the weight of loss in his eyes. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm so sorry. Mr. Williams nodded, then seemed to shake himself back to the present. But you don't want to hear about an old man's troubles. Actually, I do, Maya said, and she meant it. If you want to share them. Over the next hour, as the diner settled into its mid-morning quiet, Mr. Williams began to open up. He spoke carefully, choosing his words with the precision of someone who had once been accustomed to being listened to. Maya learned that he had been an engineer, that he had worked for the city for over 30 years, that he had owned a house on the west side with his wife Dorothy until she passed 5 years ago. The story that emerged was heartbreaking in its familiarity. After Dorothy died, the grief had overwhelmed him. He had stopped taking care of himself, stopped paying attention to bills and responsibilities. Medical debt from both his wife's and daughter's illnesses had piled up. The house had gone into foreclosure. His pension had been garnished to pay debts. A series of unfortunate events had left him homeless and proud, struggling to maintain his dignity while navigating systems designed for people half his age. I keep thinking this is temporary, he said, pushing eggs around on his plate. That I'll figure out how to get back on my feet. But every day it gets a little harder. Maya listened without judgment, occasionally refilling his coffee, letting him talk at his own pace. She had served a lot of people over the years and had developed an instinct for when someone needed to be heard as much as they needed to be fed. The hardest part, Mr. Williams continued, is the way people look at you when you're homeless. Or the way they don't look at you. Like you're invisible. Like you don't matter anymore. You matter, Maya said simply. You matter to me. The words seemed to affect him deeply. He looked at her with eyes that held unshed tears. Why, he asked. Why would you care about a stranger? Maya thought about her answer. My grandmother used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes we need help along the way. Mr. Williams smiled then, the same transformation she had seen yesterday. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman too. She was. Raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Taught me that being poor didn't mean being poor in spirit. They talked for another 20 minutes before the lunch crowd began to arrive, and Maya had to return to work. Mr. Williams thanked her again. This time when he promised to pay her back someday. There was something in his voice that made Maya believe not just that he meant it, but that he might actually have the means to do it. This became their routine over the following days. Mr. Williams would arrive around 10:30, Maya would serve him breakfast and coffee, and they would talk. She learned that he had been a civil engineer who had worked on major infrastructure projects throughout the city. He spoke knowledgeably about bridges and water systems, about the complexities of urban planning. Despite his current situation, it was clear that he was a brilliant man who had contributed significantly to the city he now wandered as a homeless person. She also learned that he spent his days at the library, where he could stay warm and use the computers to look for work and housing. He applied for jobs online, though he admitted that age discrimination was a real challenge. He was too old for most positions, too qualified for others, and his current living situation made it nearly impossible to present himself as a viable candidate. "I shower at the YMCA," he told her one morning. "Try to keep myself presentable. But when you don't have an address, when you can't guarantee you'll be reachable, employers don't want to take a chance on you." Maya found herself thinking about Mr. Williams throughout her days off, wondering where he slept when the weather turned cold, worrying about his safety on the streets. Chicago could be dangerous, especially for someone vulnerable. One Tuesday, he didn't show up. Maya found herself anxious, checking the window every few minutes. When he still hadn't appeared by noon, she was genuinely worried. She had only known him for 2 weeks, but his absence felt significant. The next day, he arrived looking tired and somewhat disheveled. There was a bruise on his cheek that he tried to hide, but Maya noticed it immediately. "Mr. Williams, what happened to your face?" He touched the bruise self-consciously. "Nothing too serious. Some young men thought I might have money. When they discovered I didn't, they were disappointed." Maya felt a surge of anger on his behalf. "Did you call the police?" Mr. Williams gave her a look that suggested she didn't understand how the world worked for people like him. "Miss Maya, when you're homeless, the police don't see you as a victim. They see you as a problem." The statement hit her hard because she recognized the truth in it. She had grown up in a community where people were often judged by their circumstances rather than their character. "Where did you sleep last night?" she asked. "Under the overpass on Lake Street. It's not so bad when the weather's warm." Maya made a decision that surprised even her. "Mr. Williams, I have a couch. It's not much, but it's safe and warm. Would you consider staying there for a while?" Mr. Williams stared at her in shock. "Miss Maya, I couldn't possibly impose on you like that. You barely know me." "I know enough," she said firmly. "I know you're a good man who's had some bad luck. I know you're honest and kind and that you've been treated unfairly by life. And I know that if our situations were reversed, you would make the same offer to me." He was quiet for a long time, and she could see the war between pride and necessity playing out on his face. "I would pay you," he said finally, "as soon as I can find work." "We'll figure that out later," Maya said. "Right now, I just want you to be safe." That evening, Maya walked Mr. Williams to her apartment. She had spent the day second-guessing her decision, wondering if she was being naive or foolish. But when she saw how carefully he wiped his feet before entering, how he asked permission before sitting down, how he looked around her small apartment as if it were a palace, she knew she had done the right thing. "This is very kind of you," he said, settling onto the couch she had prepared with clean sheets and a pillow. "Kinder than I deserve." "Everyone deserves kindness, Mr. Williams." Over the next few days, Maya discovered that having Mr. Williams as a house guest was like having a grandfather she had never known. He was quiet and respectful, cleaning up after himself and trying to help with household chores despite her protests. He was an excellent cook and insisted on preparing dinner for her when she came home from work. "It's the least I can do," he said when she tried to object. "I may not have money, but I can still contribute." The meals he cooked were sophisticated, far beyond anything Maya could have prepared herself. When she asked where he had learned to cook so well, he smiled mysteriously. "Dorothy loved to entertain," he said. "I spent many years learning to help her create memorable dinner parties." There were moments when Maya caught glimpses of the life Mr. Williams had once lived. The way he handled wine glasses with the confidence of someone accustomed to fine things. The stories he told about restaurants and cultural events. The casual way he mentioned traveling to other cities for work. It became clear that his fall from grace had been precipitous and complete. One evening, about a week after he had moved in, Maya found him looking at old photographs on his phone. He saw her notice and hesitated before showing her the screen. "This was our house," he said, showing her a picture of a beautiful Victorian home with a well-maintained garden. Dorothy loved that garden, spent hours working in it every weekend. The contrast between the man in the photograph, well-dressed, confident, standing next to an elegant woman in front of an impressive home, and the man sitting on her second-hand couch was startling. "What happened, Mr. Williams?" "Really?" He was quiet for a long moment, then began to tell her the complete story. How the medical bills had started small but grown exponentially as both his wife and daughter battled serious illnesses. How he had liquidated his retirement savings to pay for treatments. How the grief after losing them had led to depression so severe that he had stopped functioning. How quickly a life could unravel when you stopped paying attention to the details that held it together. "I had insurance," he said. "Good insurance. But it didn't cover." Maya had grown accustomed to the rhythm of sharing her small apartment with Mr. Williams. For 3 weeks now, he had been the perfect house guest, quiet and helpful, contributing what he could while maintaining his dignity. But she was beginning to notice small inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. There was the way he spoke to people on the phone when he thought she couldn't hear him. His voice took on a different tone, more authoritative, more commanding. The language he used was more formal, as if he were conducting business rather than checking on social services or job applications as he claimed. Then, there were the phone calls themselves. For someone who claimed to be homeless and unemployed, Mr. Williams received quite a few calls. When Maya asked about them, he would dismiss them as wrong numbers or telemarketers, but she noticed how quickly he would step outside or into the bathroom to take them. One evening, while Mr. Williams was in the shower, his phone rang on the kitchen counter. Maya glanced at the screen and saw a name that made her pause: David Chun, attorney. It rang twice more before going to voicemail. When Mr. Williams emerged from the bathroom, she mentioned the call. "Someone called for you. David Chun." Mr. Williams froze for just a moment, so briefly that Maya almost missed it. Then, he nodded casually. "Probably a spam call. They use real names now to trick you into answering." But his hands shook slightly as he picked up the phone, and Maya noticed that he immediately deleted the voicemail without listening to it. The next day at the diner, Maya found herself distracted, thinking about the inconsistencies. Ruby noticed her preoccupation during the lunch rush. "You seem a million miles away today, honey. Everything okay?" Maya had confided in Ruby about Mr. Williams staying with her, and Ruby had been supportive, even offering to help if Maya needed anything. Now Maya found herself wanting to voice her growing confusion. "Ruby, you ever get the feeling that someone's not telling you the whole truth, but you can't figure out what they're hiding?" Ruby raised an eyebrow. "This about your house guest?" "Maybe. I don't know. He's been wonderful, really. Helpful, respectful, kind. But there are little things that don't add up." "Like what?" Maya told her about the phone calls, the way Mr. Williams carried himself when he thought she wasn't watching, the quality of his knowledge about things that seemed beyond what an unemployed homeless man would know. "Yesterday he was helping me fix a leak under the sink," Maya said. "Not only did he know exactly what to do, but he mentioned that the building's plumbing was probably installed in the 1970s based on the type of pipes, and that the water pressure issues throughout the building were likely due to the main line configuration. How does a homeless man know that kind of specific information?" Ruby considered this. Maybe he really was an engineer like he said. Maybe he's just more knowledgeable than you expected. Maybe. But, Ruby, yesterday I saw him looking at the financial section of the newspaper. Not the job listings, the financial section. He was reading about stock prices and market trends like someone who had investments to track. What did he say when you asked him about it?" "I didn't ask. But, when he saw me notice, he quickly folded the paper and changed the subject." Ruby wiped down the counter thoughtfully. "Maya, honey, I've been in this neighborhood a long time. I've seen a lot of people, learned to read them pretty well. Sometimes people have reasons for not telling their whole story right away. Could be shame, could be fear, could be they're protecting themselves or someone else. You think he's dangerous?" "No, baby. If I thought that, I'd have told you not to let him stay with you in the first place. I think he's a good man with secrets. Question is, are you ready to find out what those secrets are?" That afternoon, Maya made a decision that would change everything. After her shift, instead of going straight home, she stopped by the branch library where Mr. Williams said he spent his days. She told herself she was just checking on him, making sure he was safe, and, well, she found him in the computer section, and what she saw made her stop in her tracks. Mr. Williams was dressed differently than she had ever seen him. Instead of the worn but clean clothes he usually wore, he had on a well-tailored suit that, while not new, was clearly expensive. His posture was different too, more confident, more commanding. He was on the phone, speaking in low, measured tones to someone about what sounded like business matters. Maya couldn't hear the details from where she stood, but she caught fragments, quarterly reports, board meeting, fiduciary responsibilities. When he hung up, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his temples as if dealing with a massive headache. For the first time since she had known him, Mr. Williams looked like a man carrying the weight of enormous responsibilities rather than someone who had lost everything. Maya approached quietly. "Mr. Williams?" He looked up, startled, and she saw something like panic flash across his face before he composed himself. "Miss Maya, what are you doing here? I was worried about you. You seemed stressed this morning." She looked at his suit. "You look different." Mr. Williams glanced down at his clothes as if he had forgotten what he was wearing. I have a job interview this afternoon. Someone donated this suit to the shelter." It was a lie, and they both knew it. The suit fit him too perfectly to be a donation, and there was something about the way he wore it that spoke of long familiarity. "Mr. Williams," Maya said gently, sitting down beside him. "I think we need to talk." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the computer screen in front of him. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. "You're right, Miss Maya. You deserve the truth." They left the library together and walked to a small park nearby. Mr. Williams seemed to be gathering his thoughts, choosing his words carefully. Finally, he sat down on a bench and began to speak. "My name really is Robert Williams. And everything I told you about my wife Dorothy and my daughter Sarah is true. They did die, and I did lose everything trying to save them. But that's not the whole story." He took a deep breath. "Miss Maya, I'm the majority shareholder and chairman emeritus of Williams Construction Group. Have you heard of it?" Maya's eyes widened. Williams Construction was one of the largest construction companies in the Midwest. They had built half the skyscrapers in downtown Chicago, major infrastructure projects throughout the region. She had seen their signs on construction sites across the city. That's impossible. You're homeless. You don't have any money." Mr. Williams, Robert, smiled sadly. "I'm not homeless by necessity, Miss Maya. I'm homeless by choice." The story that emerged over the next hour was more complex than anything Maya could have imagined. Yes, Robert had lost his house to medical debt. Yes, the grief had overwhelmed him after losing his family. But what he hadn't told her was that he was still the controlling shareholder of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "After Sarah died, I couldn't function," he explained. "I stopped going to board meetings, stopped returning calls, stopped caring about the business my grandfather started and my father built. The company was running without me, but barely. Stock prices were dropping. Employees were worried about their jobs. Clients were starting to lose confidence. So what did you do?" "I did what I thought was right. I stepped down as CEO and turned day-to-day operations over to my business partner, Marcus Chin David's father. But I retained controlling interest because I couldn't bear the thought of selling my family's legacy." Maya was struggling to process this information. "But if you own the company, why are you living on the streets?" "Because I needed to understand," Robert said. "Sarah used to volunteer at homeless shelters. She would come home and tell me about the people she met, the circumstances that led to their situations. She said I lived in a bubble, that I didn't understand what real hardship looked like." He paused, looking out at the city skyline where several buildings bore his company's name. "After she died, I became obsessed with understanding what she meant. I wanted to know what it felt like to be invisible, to be judged by your appearance rather than your character. I wanted to understand the people my daughter had dedicated her time to helping." "So you chose to be homeless?" "I told Marcus and David that I needed time to grieve, that I would be unreachable for everything. And when you're watching the people you love suffer, you don't think about money. You just want to help them get better." Maya understood. She had seen families bankrupted by medical crises, had watched good people lose everything trying to save someone they loved. The hardest part, Mr. Williams continued, was the shame. I had been successful, respected. I had provided for my family, contributed to my community. And then, suddenly, I was just another homeless man, invisible to the people who used to seek out my advice. But you're still the same person, Maya said. You still have the same knowledge, the same skills, the same worth as a human being. That's what Sarah used to say, he replied. But the world doesn't see it that way. As they talked late into the night, Maya began to understand that Mr. Williams represented something she had never really considered before. The fragility of middle-class life. How quickly someone could go from comfortable to desperate. How thin the line was between security and catastrophe. She also began to understand that there was more to Mr. Williams than he was telling her. Small things. The way he spoke about certain topics with insider knowledge. The quality of his clothes, even worn as they were. The fact that he received mail at a post office box, which seemed odd for someone who claimed to have no resources. But whatever secrets he was keeping, Maya trusted him. He had proven himself to be honest and kind, and that mattered more than whatever mysteries surrounded his past. What she couldn't have known was that Mr. Williams was indeed keeping secrets. Secrets that would soon change everything. Secrets that would reveal not just who he really was, but why fate had brought them together in ways that went far beyond coincidence. The universe, as Ruby had said, had a way of balancing things out. And the balance was about to shift in ways that would transform both of their lives forever. I need to go hungry if we can help it. The rest of Maya's shift passed quietly. She served lunch to the regular crowd, but her mind kept drifting back to Mr. Williams. There had been something almost regal about him, despite his circumstances. The way he had thanked her, the promise to pay her back someday, the dignity he maintained even when accepting help. As she walked home that evening to her small apartment a few blocks away, Maya thought about the randomness of life. How people ended up in circumstances they never could have imagined. She thought about her own journey from rural Mississippi to this Chicago neighborhood, how dreams sometimes took unexpected detours but could still lead to meaningful places. Her apartment was small but comfortable, a one-bedroom place she had managed to make feel like home with secondhand furniture and photographs of family back in Mississippi. She made herself dinner and sat by the window, looking out at the street below. Somewhere out there, Mr. Williams was probably finding a place to sleep for the night. The thought made her sad, but also determined. Tomorrow, she decided, she would make sure there was extra food ready around the same time, just in case he came back. It was a small thing, but sometimes small things mattered more than big ones. Maya had no way of knowing that this simple act of kindness would set in motion a series of events that would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. She couldn't know that Mr. Williams was not at all who he appeared to be, that his presence in her life would soon bring revelations that would shock her and everyone who knew her. All she knew was that she had fed a hungry man, and that felt like the right thing to do. In a world that often felt too hard and too cold, it was these moments of human connection that reminded her why kindness mattered. The next morning would bring Mr. Williams back to her diner, and, with him, the beginning of a story that would prove Ruby's words about the universe balancing things out in ways more profound than Maya could ever have dreamed.